let's have that portable mic. What we'll do is, basically, I'm just going to start right here, and real quick, if the panelists would take just like about a minute or two, say who you are, where you're from, what it is that you're doing, and just a little brief experience with Fodder, and then we'll just kind of hand the mic down. And yes, you can add whatever other things you want to. You don't have to stay to a minute or two. And then we'll have some questions we'll just kind of open it for questions, really, because I know there's lots of questions of these folks. So Shane, go ahead.
My name is Shane Bowler from West Jordan, Utah, Salt Lake City area. We use a fodder system, have for about 2 years at our farm. We raise beef, pork, lamb, goat, chicken, turkey, and vegetables there, but that's on fodder, all of those animals. So, is that it?
Okay. Hi, I'm Tracy Underwood. We have Santa Rosa Equestrian Center in Santa Rosa. We have about 100 horses and ponies, competition barn primarily, dressage, 3-day eventing, and a pony school. We've been feeding the fodder since February of this year, and I have been really pleased with the health benefits that the horses have been experiencing. In this cold weather, it's just really been great having the fodder because we don't have to worry about the horses not drinking. They're getting enough moisture in those biscuits of fodder that they eat for breakfast that my vet basically said, don't worry, by 10 o'clock when the waters defrost, your horses will still have plenty of liquid in them. So that's been a great thing this last week.
My name is Darrell Wood, and I'm a cow-calf operator in Northern California. We some of our cattle in Susanville on the eastern side of the Sierras from here, and then in the Sacramento Valley in the wintertime near Red Bluff, Corning, Orland, through that part of the country. So we, cow-calf operation, we also take all our cows all the way through to about 18, 19 months of age, where we have a grass-fed meat marketing business where we take it further to the consumer. We've had a fodder machine since the 1st of May. It's a T126, and so far we've been using it for pasture supplementation, to precondition bulls for breeding purposes. We wean calves and kept them on the fodder ration after we weaned them. And the more that we use the fodder system, the more possibilities we see with it, and very excited about the possibilities.
Hi, I'm Starlene Moore. I'm half of the Star Bar Ranch. This is my partner, Barbara. We operate an all-natural grass-fed beef operation in southeastern Arizona. We sell primarily to farmers markets and co-ops. And the beef that we're producing on this fodder is phenomenal. We are getting feedback from our customers that's just absolutely unbelievable. The beef has a taste and a tenderness that is not rivaled by anything. We're so pleased with the results of the fodder. We've done a lot of individual tests and experiments ourselves with different seed and different things, and we're very open for questions or anybody wanting to talk to us about that. But we're just really pleased with this. We're also now doing pork and lamb, but we don't have any results from that yet because we haven't gotten to the butchering part of that. But we're just really pleased with the fodder and what it's done for us.
Hi, everybody, and thank you all for coming out here today. We sure appreciate it. About a year ago or so, we got our systems, and one thing I will tell you, don't use your friend with a little pickup truck, try and put it in your barn. It doesn't work. We had to call in a crane operator to put them in. So that was our beginning of what was Star Bar Ranch, and we have 2 T126s. We are the queens of experiment. Starlene forgot to mention that to you. We've tried everything to make a better product. We are now raising a biscuit of about 26 pounds, which 2 1/3 cups of seed. I don't know if we hold the U.S. record in it or not, but I think we're pretty close. We sell all natural grass-fed beef. As Starlene was saying, I handle the marketing end of the business because it was my background from corporate America. And the results have been phenomenal. We process at the University of Arizona, where we run many scientific tests because on our beef, and they cannot figure out why our grass-fed beef is the level on the Werner Bratzler shear force test that it's coming in, where 7 and below is what you'd find in a supermarket. We are coming in at 4.5, 3.9 on the scale, which is basically fork tender. They don't understand it. We understand it. We do one thing different than every other rancher in Arizona. We have a fodder system. There's no other reason why our beef is the way it is, because that is the only variable that is different. And if you'd like to, we have the numbers on that. I have them all printed from the University of Arizona. You're welcome to look at it. I want to share this with everyone because it is what sets us apart from the ranchers in Arizona. And we'll be glad to share that with you. Thank you so much. My name is Barbara, and my last name is Sherry, and I'm the bar of Star Bar.
Thanks, Barb. Yes, my name's Flavio Racanello, and I'm one of the directors and one of the mad inventors of this whole fodder solutions phenomenon. And together with my business partner Terry here, I guess we're the reason why all these wonderful people have gathered here to learn more about fodder solutions. This started off as a hobby for me personally about 11 years ago, just out of an interest of trying to find better ways of feeding livestock on small acreage. We were in the middle of one of the worst droughts in Australia, and I started experimenting growing fodder on my small 30-acre ranch. And out of that necessity, got to meet Terry along the way, who was doing his own, hydroponic system. And for a couple of years, we sort of danced around each other, and I tried to find out what he knew about fodder. He tried to find out what I knew about fodder. And eventually we decided to join forces after a newspaper article appeared on my small ranch. And the rest, you might say, is history, because in this short time now, over a period of some 7 or 8 years now, with our involvement, we've managed to spread fodder to over 11 countries. So it's growing all the time, and it's very humbling to hear some of the fantastic feedback that we hear from our customers. It truly is an amazing product if used correctly, and it will change the way we farm right around the globe. So I welcome you all here today, and we're happy to answer as many questions, and please feel free to ask anything you like. We're here to help. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thanks very much for making the effort to come here. I'm Herman Jolink from Fodder Solutions Africa, based in Cape Town, South Africa. We're represented in 6 countries on the African continent at the moment. Got involved in Fodder Solutions about 4 years ago, and it's been the most amazing ride rewriting animal nutrition textbooks. It's a new way of farming. There are no textbooks that are written on it now. And as we go along and learn more and more about the product and the possibilities of what it can do, it just amazes us more and more. It's not something that you can say, well, we've now arrived. We're only just scratching the surface of understanding the possibilities of what fodder can do for animal nutrition. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Herman. My name's Terry Collis. I'm the co-inventor of the systems you see today, and for those of you that have seen the GrowDeck system, that's a system that Flavio and I have invented together. I've been sprouting, designing, manufacturing fodder systems since 2000, and we're always coming up with new ways of growing the fodder And yeah, the systems keep evolving, and we're always learning more and more about the animal nutrition. And I'd just like to say a huge thank you to Kurt and Debbie and everyone at Simply Country here in the USA for all the hard work you've put in and to make Fodder Solutions a success it is today in America, and for this wonderful event that you've put on this afternoon. So thank you, Kurt and Debbie. Thank you. And for those of you that do not know, they were introduced before. Scott from Japan. There's Scott from Japan. He sells the Fodder Solution systems in Japan. And hiding in the middle there is Vijay from India. He sells the Fodder systems all across India, and it is just taking off incredibly in India as well. And just to give you an idea how far we've come in Australia, there's only 20 million people in Australia. There's more horses in the state of California than all of Australia. There's more cattle in the state of Texas than all of Australia. In Australia, we have over 1,000 fodder systems in use, and without even trying, we manufacture, market and sell 2 systems a week every week. That's how far the product has come in Australia. It's not really how does it work, why does it work. It's more a case of now, how do I get one? What, you're telling me it's that long before I get one? And that's what the US will evolve to become eventually. So thank you everyone for attending today.
Hi, I'm Cindy Daly. Several folks I know. I'm just down the road. I come from Orville, but I work at California State University at Chico. I run an organic dairy program for teaching and for applied research. It's a pasture-based program. It's 100% organic, and we've been making organic milk since 2007. We've got the dairy manager with us, Darby. Why don't you raise your hand? Darby Hefner. She's been instrumental in helping us bring that program online, and we continue to use that as a model to teach students. We ended up getting involved in fodder because we are very interested in sustainable feeding strategies, and it had appeared to be, something of interest to many of the producers that I work with. I work with a whole host of organic dairy producers in the Western region called the Western Organic Dairy Producers Alliance. And that group of producers is obviously very interested in staying, financially viable. And if you know anything at all about feed costs in the dairy industry, you'll know that the feed costs have been astronomical. So when a ton of grain, organic grain, gets to be $625 a ton, dairy producers are looking for some alternatives. So that's what I'm all about, looking at the economic viability of alternative feeds. So that's what brought me up to Grass Valley, and I came knocking on Kurt's door almost 2 years ago, I guess it was, and we began talking about fodder and talked about the possibility of trying to get and launch a fodder research study of one type or another. So we were able to get a system installed. We have an 1,100 pound a day system. That's the T126 that many of you have already seen, and you were down on the farm yesterday. If you haven't seen it, you're more than welcome to come down. Darby is there almost 7 days a week, it seems like. So you can certainly drop by the university farm there in Chico and have a look at that system. It is up and running, and it's been running, and it's been running quite well. We've been playing around with a variety of different ways to keep the system, the mold at bay, and have been fairly successful. Chlorine does work quite well. But trying to move away from that, and it is organically acceptable. We do have the certification approval for that, but we've moved into a paracetic acid, and if you'd like to talk a little bit about that, we have. Great. Cliff was here yesterday, not here, but he was in Chico, and he spoke quite a bit about the type of chemistry that he uses to try and deal with that. Aside from that, we're interested in looking at the different types of seeds and how those seeds play out in terms of the overall digestibility and the overall analysis. And clearly, it's as everyone has said, on a dry matter basis, this doesn't make a lot of sense. So it has to be something more than that, and there are a lot of dairy producers that I work with that swear by it. And I have a lot of confidence in my dairy producers because they're quite observant. They see things that most people don't. And that's where all good research starts. It's with good observations. So we're taking some of those observations and we've transformed those into some research protocols. And we sat down with Kurt and with Darby and with a few folks from the industry that I think are very knowledgeable ruminant nutritionists, and we knocked out a couple of hypotheses, protocols that we thought were doable. We're very interested in knowing whether or not fodder can substitute for grain, because that's 31 cents per dry matter pound. Fodder we can produce for 6 cents per dry matter. Yeah, so anyway, there's a huge price differential there, but we have to feed a lot more fodder. The question is, how much fodder do we need to feed in order to substitute for the parlor grain? And that's an answer that no one in the industry seems to have at the moment. We played around with that in last spring. Right now, we're basically looking for research funding. So I was really interested in what the folks there from South Africa have already done with putting their finances together from a multitude of different sources. And I think that's very creative and very smart. So we'll probably be looking at that. But ultimately, this spring, we conducted a study where we looked at the replacement rates. We divided our cow herd as they calved into 4 groups. We had a 12-pound of parlor grain, a 6-pound of parlor grain. We had one group that was on 3 pounds of grain and 18 pounds of fodder, and one group that was on 36 pounds of fodder. We transitioned them to the point where they were on that fodder, and it did take some time. And keep in mind, we're feeding this in the parlor twice a day. We've got it split in half. So this is quite an undertaking. And essentially what we did was we tracked milk production and we tracked milk components, and then we priced them out and look at the economic return, because we do get paid on components. So we assessed just what those changes were. We were higher in fat in the 2 fodder groups, but we were lower in milk. But if you look at the overall, we returned slightly more money in the fodder groups. But you know what it's dependent upon? What is it dependent upon? This is where you interact with me. The cost of the seed is everything. And there is huge differences, and any of these folks that have been involved in it can tell you that that is really the challenge, is finding a very good, reliable, high-quality seed source and at a reasonable cost. And if you can do that, then the fodder thing makes really good money. I can see how that could be quite profitable. But if it's not, if it's a very expensive ordeal, then it's going to be not profitable. I mean, it's that simple. So, those are the kinds of things, and the data that we have, I think, is interesting. It's preliminary, but what it did, it told us that we could replace grain with fodder. The question is, whether your dairy, in your situation, you can be economical at it. Only you can answer that. For our situation, I know what our price of our seed has to be in order for that to be an economical process. So it gave us more questions than answers. And really the big elephant, the big thing that needs to be answered is what's going on in the rumen. Because it's that rumen microecology that makes milk, that converts the grass to beef and to milk. And that's where we make our money. So we want to know more about what the impact is of fodder on the rumen microecology. We want to know if it's going to make that rumen more efficient. Are we going to be able to get more milk out of the feed that we feed? Can we feed lower quality feed? These are all great ways to make more money in the dairy industry. But all of that depends on fodder being more than that 2-dimensional analysis on paper, because on paper it doesn't pencil. So what we're expecting or what we're hoping for or what we would like to be able to track and monitor is looking for the effects of fodder on the rumen microflora to determine whether or not there's a change in microflora population, which we know there will be because of the pH differences. Grain causes very acidic fluid, and that's going to change microflora, and the fodder is not. The fodder makes it a very basic, we're looking at a pH of around 7. That changes the microflora. Question is that profitable in terms of how it affects the overall fiber digestibility? So we're set up this spring. We're doing some cannulations. We're going to be collecting some rumen fluid, and we'll be looking at microflora population changes with a couple of different techniques and technologies. We're using HPLC and GC in order to really understand the volatile fatty acids. They come right off those bugs, and that can tell us a lot about what the rumen microflora is all about. But we're also going to track the populations using RT-PCR, which is a process by which we look at the DNA signatures of microflora so that we can identify what populations are changing. And that's going to help us understand the biology of this thing. And once we understand the biology, then I think we can really make great strides in moving forward with better understanding how this fodder feeds. We're also interested in one other question, and amazingly, we have a lot of ideas that are almost like we were on the same page and on the same conference call, which we never had. So ultimately, it's kind of interesting that people around the globe are thinking the same thoughts, thinking that we have to find these same answers. So we want to collaborate because there's nothing that could really catapult this forward faster than working together and synergizing. So we want to make sure we connect. And I would love a trip to South Africa. That would be like real okay with me. I think Darb said she'd like to go too. So the last thing that I know we're working on, and I know that the South Africans are also working on, is what I would call a life cycle assessment, where we split the cow herd in half. Because I don't think we really got the full picture when we transitioned these cows on these fodder rations without a suitable lengthy acclimation period, because those rumen microflora take time to adapt and to adjust. There is nothing more rude than doing a sudden shift in diet on your cow. She'll crash, right? Because she's all about the bugs in her rumen. So if you shock them, you're going to set her back a lot. So we think transitions is important, and we've been talking about that. I think the dry cow period's the period to do the acclimation. Let her calve on fodder, or let her calve on grain, and then follow those cows throughout an entire lactation, because there's more ways to make money in the dairy industry than with milk production, right? Certainly components and milk yield, but we're missing so much more. It's all the other things that it's very difficult to put a financial number on. Reproductive fertility, right? Herd health, incidence of mastitis, incidence of lameness, all of those things factor in. And the guys, the dairymen that are feeding fodder are telling me that the coats on those cows are they luster. And if that's the case, then we know that the vitamins which are in fodder must be playing a role there as well. What are the impacts? We want to track that economically, because I'm a German farmer at heart. I always have been. I want to know the money part of it, as well as the biology. So that's where we're going with our program, and I took way too long, but that's basically what we're doing. That's where we're going. And we are funded for next year to do the digestibility work, and then we're going to be working on cobbling together our financing so that we can do the life cycle assessment.
Okay, so some of our panelists and some of the species and things that are going on here. And so what we'll do is we'll open the floor up to some questions. Kyle has a microphone, so if you want to just raise your hand if you've got a question, and then we're going to pass this microphone around, and I think whoever wants to answer the questions, we're going to hand them the microphone. So it's your opportunity to have some of your questions answered. And we do, by the way, so I do have in my pocket here some questions for people on the internet that on our website that knew they weren't going to be able to be here, but they submitted some questions, and we may go to those too, but we're going to deal with the folks here in this room. So Go ahead. Any questions out there? Here's one right here. Kyle, get him the microphone. Hold on 1 second, sir.
What percent fodder can you feed? Is it 100%, or the other question would be, how much dry matter do you need to add?
Are we talking about cattle? You're
talking about cattle.
Okay. What we do on our farm is that we feed 1 biscuit per cow. And that could be a lactating cow or a cow that is pregnant at the time. And we just keep dry matter out in front of them, or they're on a pasture, depending on what time of the year it is. It doesn't require a tremendous amount of dry matter. Hay, yes, sir. We grow our own hay and organic
Alfalfa
hay.
or grain hay?
We do alfalfa, and then we also do like sweet sorghum. And then in the winter, we do a winter mix. It's barley, oats, rye, and wheat.
That is in the form of the hay also?
Yes, sir, except for we just graze it during the winter is what we do. And that's plenty. In fact, one of the things that just happened is at the end of our hay season, our summer hay season, we allow the cows to go out into the alfalfa field and take everything down. And then after they're done, we go in and drill in the winter. And this year, because we were using an effective microorganism on our fields, we were feeding fodder and they had the alfalfa. It was incredible what happened to our calves and our cows. I mean, the cows were about as wide as they were tall, and that was only a month of the grazing. We were giving them probably more feed than they actually needed, but I mean, that's what it can do for them. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, Jack, that's a good question. The possibilities with the fodder have been pretty unique for us. When we first started using the machine in May, we had a pretty healthy irrigated pasture system, and we used the fodder to be able to increase the numbers on our pastures. We did that approximately about 10%. But I think the overall amount of fodder per head was like 2 or 3 pounds a piece. It wasn't a lot, but it made a good difference in the carrying capacity on our pasture. Now we wean the calves off these cows, and we move the cows on the winter range, and the calves are still on this pasture. We're feeding them more of the fodder now to maintain them until the rain starts the winter feed going on our winter pasture. So to me, it's got all kinds of possibilities. I really think that in our grass finishing program, we could actually do a 60-70% fodder ration and fatten these calves up to slaughter weight pretty efficiently. And that's our next step in our experiment. So.
One thing I'd like to add is it's taking us from start to finish around 18 months to grow out a steer to between 1,000 and 1,100 pounds, if that gives you any indication. As you know, that's grass-fed with the fodder, around 18 months. Probably so, yeah. But we're getting, but we're feeding, it'd be more than that. You're talking about a biscuit per cow who's raising a calf. So you're feeding the cow and the calf. And then when we pull the calves off at about 450, 500 pounds, then they're fed a diet of around a half of a biscuit with the dry matter is what we're doing. And right now we've got them with 2 1/3 pounds of seed. We have them at 26 pounds. Yes, sir.
What kind of finish are you getting on those steers in 18 months? Are you getting into like a choice finish?
It's really funny because we process at the University of Arizona, and they will not give you a rating for grass-fed. And we're not really truly getting any real marbling, but our tenderness numbers are incredible. It's like Barb said earlier, a 7 on a fillet in a grocery store is acceptable, and we're getting anywhere from 3.9 to around 6, mostly standing 4 and 5. And so the lesser the number, the more tender the beef is. So basically what they told us is that if it wasn't based on marbling, but it was based on tenderness, what did they say? We would be getting prime or choice? We would be getting choice, is what they've told us. And I've got actual pictures of some of our fillets, if you'd like to see it.
I've got questions for all of you, but I'll just ask Darla, what quality of seed are you using?
We're using a pretty high quality seed. It's an organic seed, and it was developed by the University of Arizona because we are a desert state, and it was designed to create a longer, stronger root to reach water in the desert. And what we have found, and we have tried every seed you could possibly imagine, we run tests constantly. And what we found is that this particular seed, we get just 100% germination. It's rated to be 90, but we never get any seed falling out. And we get a root bed that's just incredible. Our root bed is at least a couple of inches.
Is it a malted barley?
No, it's 6-row, isn't it? Yeah, 6-row. It's solar. It's spelled like solar, but said solar.
And then the other question would be, could you explain the microbes?
The effective Okay. We ran across a guy who'd been a farmer all of his life, and he was starting to sell and to farmers and hydroponic users this effective microorganisms that were developed in Japan. And he approached us and asked what we were feeding our cattle, how we were feeding them, and he came out to the ranch, and we did kind of a soil test, and we went around digging up roots and looking at everything, and then we decided to go with the effective microorganisms on our hay fields. So every week we would go and dig up the roots of different plants, and we would see what kind of results we were getting. Well, what happened is that we went from a taproot on our alfalfa to a taproot with numerous feeder roots. And we started seeing growth, health, everything. Everything started changing on our fields. And at that time, we were probably getting 3/4 to a ton per acre. And this went on for about 3 months, and every week he would come out and we would dig the roots up, and we just kept getting more feeder roots, more feeder roots. So after about 3 months of this, I said, Bill, what do you think would happen if I put this in the fodder boxes? And he said, well, it isn't going to hurt anything, and he said it's really healthy for the cows. So I started with 1/4 cup, and we were using the standard 2 3/3 cup of seed. And we started with 1/4 cup, and on the morning of the 7th day, we took the scale out, and we basically increased our weight by 3 pounds, just using 1/4 cup of this effective microorganisms every day. So then about 3 weeks ago, I had this big idea that I was going to run an even bigger test. So we have the two T126s, so we took, and it's divided into thirds. So we took a third, we did 2 pounds of seed, 2 1/3 pound of seed, and we kept our standard 2 3/4. And what we did was we increased the effective microorganisms to a half of a cup. The 2 pound of seed yield 21.77 pounds average. The 2 1/3 cup was 26 pounds, and the 2 3/4 averaged 27.6. But what we found out is that we had so much growth on the 2 3/4 cup that the biscuit was hot to the touch. It was just growing so fast that it just couldn't get any air around it, and the water couldn't escape. And we found a little bit of mold in it. So basically, from this, what we got out of it is that we're cutting back to 2 1/3 cups. We're going to get a 26-pound biscuit, and the most wonderful part of this story is a year's supply of EM for a T126 is $30. So we're saving $8,000 in the cost of our seed per year, and we're gaining 116,000 pounds of growth. So it was, I highly recommend it. And our cattle, I know, are benefiting greatly from it. You're welcome.
Okay, my question goes back to about the meat quality. Since marbling does add flavor, do you guys have, I mean, I understand that fodder grows muscle, so your meat's probably very lean and very tender, but do you have any input on how the actual flavor, because in America that's very important to people when they buy beef?
Well, what I can say to you is that people talk about our beef, and I ate beef in the 50s and the 60s. And I can only tell you that flavor today is beyond the even tenderness. There are the two factors that are the most important to the American consumer, and they're willing to pay for it. I will tell you in testimonials from people who have eaten our beef, because we sell at the farmer's market, they say it reminds them of beef you ate in the 40s and 50s, untreated, unflavored with injection beef. And they say the smell when it cooks is beyond anything that you have ever eaten today. And there is no water content that comes off of our ground beef. There is no grease, because that makes it another type of a smell. So the flavor is just, it's just really unbelievable. And we have tons of testimonials. And the other thing that's really important, I think, that you talk about in the natural grass-fed beef, because that's what we sell, is we have many people who have health conditions who are coming to our booth and they are saying, I cannot eat beef anymore because it keeps me up at night. It makes I have a sick stomach. I just can't sleep. So they're finding that they can eat our beef and actually go to bed at night and not get indigestion from it. I mean, it's just so different. And then we have people who have rheumatoid arthritis. They're coming and they're saying, this is changing things for me. We have a woman who has an autistic child. She is saying she's 3 years old. She can do numbers. She can do alphabet. She has switched her to an all-natural diet plus our beef. It's not a panacea for everything, but when you see children maturing at 11 years old, that is not right. That is just not metabolically right, nor it's not right. And when I have families that come, they're adamant that they're going to switch to this type of beef. So if you're sitting out there in your ranchers and this is an avenue that you want to go to, I can only tell you that it's been extremely and extraordinarily positive. We tell them, I have literature, and I'm willing to share it with you all, of the advertising pieces I put together, and they're just astounded at the fact that we put out 3,000 pounds per day that we feed to our cattle. And the difference in the flavor is, I don't quite even know how to describe it. You just have to hear our folks that come back week after week to buy our beef, what they think about it.
Hi there. Going on the quality of the meat. In South Africa, We slaughtered in excess of 200 cattle out of our feedlot, the Fodder Solutions feedlot in South Africa. And the guys that actually do the curing of the meat and the cutting up for us have been in the trade for over 40 years. And the one thing that they noticed on the carcass, normally you would age the carcass between 7 and 9 days. And after that, and I'll tell you the test that the guys use to determine the day that the carcass must be cut up. This guy's done it for 40 years. He rubs the back of his hand on the fat on the outside of the carcass and smells it. And when it gives just that faint bit of fatty smell, that day that carcass gets cut. Well, ours at 16 days was still perfect. In other words, it had hung for 16 days, no smell. And he called us up there and he said, I want to show you another thing. Where the ribeye steak is, what he does, he takes a plastic bag, puts it on his finger, his small finger, and he pushes it into the ribeye steak. And he can feel through the tip of his finger the parting of the fiber inside the steak, inside that ribeye steak. And what he found with the fodder one was that it had a very slight crust on the top of it. And he put his finger through that, and he said inside it was so tender, there was no parting, you can't feel any fibers parting. But what astounded him was that this crust on the outside actually preserved the meat. So that was the one thing that came out of that. In South Africa, we have a steakhouse chain called Cattle Baron. And the owners bought a whole carcass from Fodder Solutions, and they took it to 4 different Cattle Baron restaurants and took 15 of their top regular clients at each restaurant and gave them 4 different cuts of fodder beef and 4 different cuts of their top beef that they would normally serve in their Cattle Baron restaurants. And only one person on one cut chose their normal beef above fodder beef. What we do in South Africa in our feedlot is that we bring the animals in at about 250 kilograms, and we feed them with fodder plus a rolled barley ration, beef feedlot concentrate and straw. And then when we get to the end, we up the concentrate levels to about 2 kilograms. And out of that, we get all of our carcasses out of more than 200 cattle last year. I think we only had 1 that was under an A2 and about 5 that were A3. Now in South Africa, that's the thickness of the fat on the outside. In other words, an A1 is 1 millimeter of fat. Every single one of our other carcasses were A2, and that was in excess of 200, which is a premium price cut all along. The other thing that we found with the fodder-fed animals was that there was almost no fat around the kidneys and the liver. And the slaughter percentages went up by 2% on average compared to normal grain-fed animals. But what was more interesting was when we did the deboning, we got an extra 2% per carcass of meat off because we didn't have the fat around the kidneys and the other things. So there was, if you take 2% more yield on slaughter weight, and if you take 2% deboning weight, that is huge money in the beef industry.
All right, got another question right back here, and while I'm passing the mic over, just pass it down to Shane. I'd like to hear his comment on meat quality as well, just real quick.
Am I going first? I'm not nearly that long-winded. I don't think fairly simple based on experience, but certainly the taste in our meat, we have the biggest delivery of product actually today is where I should be at my farm. And my poor sick wife's handling that, but taste I don't think is one of my concerns on the beef. So they taste very good.
I had a question. I have a T126, and I don't remember the names, but you ladies from Arizona said that you said something about 7 days where you calculated the poundage of your biscuit. Do you harvest on the 7th day or on the 6th day?
It grows for 6 days. The harvest is on the morning of the 7th day.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm harvest on the morning of the 6th day, and we're getting about a 15-pound biscuit.
Oh.
So I was getting 20-pound biscuits on the 7th day, but I run into some mold problems. And so I was a little confused. Is it feed to seed or seed to feed in 6 days, or is it 7 days? And so based on the tray deal, we seed in the morning, we harvest, and then on the morning of the 6th day we harvest. And so...
Well, you have six trays, and if you put it in that day, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
And then we're harvesting that day.
And then you're going to harvest the next day.
No, we harvest.
So you have 6 sets of trays. Yeah, okay.
So you got me a little bit confused. Yeah. I did load the system one time and let it go to 7 days, and I got 20-pound biscuits, and the stem growth was almost up to the rack.
Yeah. We're only growing 6 days, and we're getting the 26 pounds.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for the clarification.
Sorry about
the other
that.
question I have is for the equestrian lady. I have 100 horses also, and I noticed I started out with my fodder system, feeding one biscuit in the morning, this alfalfa at night, and I was a little disappointed with the results. But I changed to fodder once or twice a day, depending on the amount of fodder available, and wheat hay. And I found that the horses look amazing. You know what I mean? The hair coat, all the stuff that you people talk about is very legitimate and very real. But I did have, I thought, was a little bit of a negative effect when I fed good. And in Fallon, Nevada, where we're from, we raise good alfalfa hay, and the alfalfa and the fodder mixture on the horses, where I wasn't feeding them anything but a biscuit in the morning and just alfalfa and a smaller amount of alfalfa, I didn't see, the fleshing ability. You know what I mean? If you go look at the stud, I have got a whole pen of 2-year-old stud colts, and you go look at them today, and it's amazing. They're 2-year-olds. People think they're 3-year-olds, and the flesh on them is amazing and all that kind of stuff. But it's been more of a combination with the fodder and the wheat hay. What's your experience?
Yeah, I tend to feed grass hay, and I've had a very good experience. For our upper-level competition horses, they'll usually get an 18-pound biscuit for breakfast, the same for lunch, and then grass hay at dinner. So I feed 3 times a day, right? And I feed the hay in the evening just to give them something to munch on, because they wolf down the fodder biscuit. So, but with the grass hay, it works very well. Yeah, a lot of warm bloods. We have a lot of Iberian horses and Friesians as well. Yeah, big horses. Yeah. Oh, are the owners, the horses are their babies, so whether they need it or not, yes, they're going to get, Smart Packs just loves my ranch. They all come up with their own little concoction. I've had Claire Tunis. She's a PhD in equine nutrition, and she's done a lot of analysis for us, and, they're just over-supplementing. They don't, but yes, the owners need it. So it makes them feel good.
We still farm with draft horses on our place, and they're certainly not pampered. But all that they get is 2 biscuits of fodder each, which is about 40 pounds. We're producing about a 20-pound fodder biscuit, and straw. And that's all they get. They weigh 2,000 pounds apiece, my older ones, and they're in harness every day. So I haven't had any trouble with the horses. Personally, I think if you're feeding alfalfa and fodder, you're wasting money. You don't need to do that. Well, yeah, I run Percherons.
The work quality you're getting on a daily basis out of those horses and harness are doing
They have
well.
plenty of go in them. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We
That's
don't
what
have
we
any
all
trouble.
wanna
Yeah. We plow with them. We cultivate with them.
And they're not
we
as
mow all
hot.
our hay on a sickle bar mower. So yeah, we don't have any trouble. But I don't know what exactly you mean by hot. If you mean hyper.
Well, right. You feed too much alfalfa or anything else, you're end up,
And part of that, in my opinion, is because they get used every day. If you have a horse, you may not feed him a high energy nutrition, but if you don't use that horse, then he's going to be hot when you get him out of the pen. But our horses are in harness every day, so that's going to take some of their energy out anyway. They're just plain good horses because they're used as far as the hot aspect goes.
Hello. I kind of have a question for all of you here. Go ahead.
Sorry, can I just make a comment? In South Africa, there was a horse that is in the Olympics. It'll be coming to the Olympic or going to the Olympics next year. It's a jumper, jumping 1.8, 1.9 meters high. The horse had been fed concentrates, and the concentrates had eaten the entire pellet away from the horse. So there was no pellet to separate the nose cavity and the mouth. And the horse had withered away, and on the Wednesday, they had 4 vets attending to this horse. In South African terms, it cost in excess of 600,000 rand. And on the Wednesday, they'd come to the conclusion, the 4 vets, that they would have to put the horse down, Rena, on Monday, the following Monday. And on the Wednesday afternoon, the people that own the horse, and you can go on our website, you'll see Mark and Di Slade. And Mark phoned me on the Wednesday and said, listen, I've heard about this thing called fodder. Do you think it would help? And I said, listen, I don't know. I can't tell you. And he said, look, please, have you got a unit that you can send us? I got my driver and a T12 on a trailer. They left on the Wednesday at about lunchtime. And the Thursday morning, they were sitting 1,500 kilometers at Mark's house. When he woke up the next morning, there was a fodder box full of fodder waiting for him. They took it out and they started feeding Rena in September last year. In March this year, Rena won the Burlington Cup in South Africa. 3 weeks ago in the Olympic jump-offs, Rena came first in the first round of jump-offs. And this, she is only fed fodder. She cannot eat straw. She cannot eat anything else except plain fodder. And everybody says it can't be done. We don't know enough about fodder to know what can and can't be done in it. We've got a lamb feedlot that a guy who's been doing it now for 2 years has cut everything out of the feedlot except fodder. And he's still getting phenomenal weight gains. When I say phenomenal weight gains, 300 grams a day average on Dorpers. And he feeds no straw, no concentrate, because he said it was just a schlep to go and get it from the co-op. So in his feedlot, his lambs only get fodder.
Okay, so I guess this question would be more for Shane. We've heard a lot about ruminants and how they can take fodder and how they have a lot of benefits and gain from it. But what about monogastrics besides horses, such as hogs? What was your result with that?
I'm a little bit blind. Will you raise your hand? Who am I talking to? Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
What about hogs specifically? Hogs can eat just straight fodder. In fact, Rob, where did he go? Is in the back. He's from Washington State. He also feeds hogs. Why don't you come up, Rob, if it's okay with Kurt, and maybe he can help me answer this question. But we do a grass-fed operation on all of our animals. So even the chickens and the turkeys, animals that you wouldn't expect, eat fodder. Hogs certainly are fine to eat fodder all the way through. We raise our own alfalfa and our own barley as well, and some of our own wheat. And so we will put in a hammer mill, a ration of alfalfa that we grind with the barley and the wheat. We feed that as a ration in addition with our pigs. mainly just because we grind up a little bit of that and feed to all the same ration to the turkeys, the chickens, and the pigs, and the ducks. I know that Rob has gone straight fodder on his pigs. Was that kind of what you were asking? No.
We've cut our feed time from 6.5 months to 5.5 months. Our biggest gain, I would say, and I wanted to ask everybody else on the panel as well, we've noticed a dramatic drop in respiratory issues going from a hammer milled feed to where we did a very similar ration. We were a non-GMO ration previously, and we milled everything fine for hogs for consumption issues. We haven't had a case of pneumonia since we changed to fodder, and that's due to the fact that pigs are breathing what they're eating. I think that is a tremendous gain. I don't have any scientific proof to prove that other than the fact I haven't lost a hog in 8 months, or 6 months now. So, but that is a tremendous benefit.
How much are you feeding those pigs?
As much as they will eat, and I have.
Your weaning weights on the sows are much better as well. We've seen that any of our sows that are farrowed on fodder, then those weaners will eat fodder, and they're enormously bigger than any of the weaners on a dry feed.
Yeah, I think that really gets to the comments that I was making about the added value that you get from a feed matter that is so high in vitamins, because that's been really well established. It's one of the few things that is in the literature, is the fact that it's very high in vitamin C, it's very high in some B vitamins, it's very high in vitamin A, which could account for, the reason why, the herd health has been so phenomenal with the fodder-fed animals. And that seems to be fairly consistent, no matter if we're talking about, the simple stomached versus the ruminant. We're seeing the same phenomenon. So I think that's kind of an interesting benefit that isn't often evaluated economically in this, situation, because most people are just looking at feed cost and then trying to pencil it. Well, it's bigger than that. It's a herd health effect, and if you have herd health problems, you know how costly that can be. So this is an added benefit that may actually be more profitable than just the raw feed cost in and of itself. So anyway, and I did want to touch on the carcass quality issues, because fodder is so high in these vitamins that that in itself could be a real selling point in terms of carcass quality. And in terms of tenderness, if we're talking about tenderness is only marbling's 30% of that. 70% has to do with the genetics and the muscle fiber dynamics. So if we can affect that nutritionally, which we know we can, it appears that fodder might have some real interesting, impacts there that have not yet been, identified and characterized. So I think that's something else that needs to be done.
So I've heard some comments about mold issues. Have all of you experienced some mold, and if you have, how have you dealt with that?
My farm's in a unique situation in that regard. Typically, you would have some type of a mold inhibitor, whether that be chlorine or they have other injectable type situations. The well that is currently located on our farm is very high salinity, which acts as the mold inhibitor. We've never had to use chlorine tablets in ours. We still get about a 20-pound biscuit from 2.5 pounds of seed. I've seen little bits of mold from time to time, mainly when we use dirty seed. If we use a feed grade barley, not a cleaned barley, then we will see a little bit, looks like a spider web on it, in which case I just don't feed it to the horses, but we don't use that seed anymore anyway. So, in fact, Paul, who is sitting right behind you, is our feed source, and he gives us a very good mix that we've developed together of clean seed that works really well.
There was certainly a learning curve when we first got our systems. Once we got the temperature set right, just haven't had a problem. But like the gentleman in the back said, when we did try to go the 7 days, we did run into mold with that. So we definitely harvest on the 6th day. I just had an overabundance of it at first. But we use chlorine, and no problems ever since.
in our machine, we're also 100% organic as well, so we had to use the chlorine injection system. And when we first started out, we used a lesser quality chlorine, and because it was in direct sunlight, we did have some mold issues. But the moment we stepped up to a better grade chlorine and actually insulated the tank itself from the sun, the results were phenomenal, to the point now where our setting for our chlorine injection is at the lowest it can be, and we have an extremely clean box.
What we started doing was there was a couple of things that happened to us. Now, since we've cut back on the seed, there's just zero mold, there's zero scum. And the other thing that we did was that we steam wash our trays. That has made a huge difference. But the other thing that we did was we traded our chlorine for effective microorganisms. We have little floaters, and they're ceramic beads that are saturated with the effective microorganisms, and that floats in our tanks. And ever since we've done that, and we've added the extra effective microorganisms, we don't have anything at all. When you consider that you are making an investment in a fodder box, you're going to have so much water that you use, you're going to have so much labor involved to do it, and you're also going to have a specific amount of electrical cost. If you take an inferior seed, which is what you're talking about, your results are so minimal. We've done every test you could possibly imagine. In fact, when we were doing this last test, we took field run barley in our other box, and we ran a test with that, and the results were not good at all. We had fodder about this tall with a seed bed about like that, and then when you pulled it out, it fell apart. And that was going to save us $16,000 a year. But so the other test said, hey, the better seed is the way to go. All I have to do is add this effective microorganism for $30 a year, and now I've backed up on my seed cost and I've increased my production. So in the year and a half that we've been doing this, we've tried about 10 different seed sources, and we just keep going back to the same seed. That's the high quality, cleaned and certified. It just makes a big difference. It's 37 cents a pound, and we buy it in the large totes. And it's organic, so that's correct, yes.
I had a question about the salinity of the water. So I'm wondering if you could use salt in your fodder feeder instead of chlorine to get rid of the mold.
That would probably be a good question for Joe, who's sitting right there. I don't believe, to my very minimal chemistry knowledge, that salt translates necessarily into salinity when you do that. I don't know if you want to speak to that, Joe. So you could probably try and arbitrarily create that environment if that's what you want. I was going to speak to your question also, if I can diverge again. I used feed grade barley, which I can get for $9 a hundredweight, under the pretense I was saving money, but your germination rate is extremely low, and you spend a lot of time cleaning those trays. So that's one of the things I actually did do the math on. I can buy certified clean seed from Paul for, I think, $22 a hundredweight is what we're at right now, and it actually saves me money because I get much better biscuits, much better feed, and much less labor. So I wouldn't fall into the trap of the initial view of one costs 12, if that's what you said, and the other one is 30. That's not exactly how it translates. Did we answer the salinity question?
I'd pleased to do so. When we start calculating salinity, we do it in parts per million, and it's a solute. And you're kind of a unique situation also because your aquifer is coming off of waters that's actually diverging from the Great Salt Lake. And so you're getting trace minerals at the same time as having the salt. So I would say that it's not a safe bet to say that salt alone is going to be your solution because if you're raising your salinity, your water uptake is going to be modified also in your plant. So you could damage the plant also if you're just going to go straight salt. I'd say go with a more balanced solution because it will kill microbes, that's for sure. But you've also got to be very careful about the balance of extraction in the plants themselves.
Hi, I've been thinking a lot about this salt business. We just started using C90 salt. Not in this application yet, but I'm thinking that it could be a really good thing. And now that everybody's talking about it as a sanitizer as well, does anybody have experience using sea minerals or ocean water with this thing? I do know that ocean water, like we've seen phenomenal things happen on our pasture and with our livestock. There's 90 minerals in this, and I've seen lots of things happen in that context. And I'm just wondering how that translates at seed stage. Is the seed taking everything just from itself, or is it going to be absorbing a lot of minerals as it's growing if you had minerals in the water in the form of sea salt?
Yeah, I think everyone is going to have a very unique situation depending upon your water source, and that's why it's probably really critical that you have your water analyzed to know what you're working with.
I'm not talking about my water. I'm talking about adding a brine, like putting a brine. I'm not sure how the systems work, but actually dissolving a brine and having it be a portion of your actually misting water.
Yeah, well, we've got the Redmond Salt folks. We spoke with them at conference in Twin Falls, Idaho, about a month ago or so, and they were working with what they call their soil conditioner, and so it's a trace mineral salt, kind of similar to sea salt 90, similar in that way.
They only have 50 minerals.
Well,
C90's
great.
way more.
Are you selling this stuff maybe?
I'm gonna.
Well, ultimately what they were doing was they were solubilizing this, and then they were using, he's right here. Why don't you go ahead and speak to that? First person, please.
Sure. Jed Johnson from Redmond Minerals. We have a dairy there also with the fodder system. Yeah, we put our salt brine from our Redmond salt into our fodder system. We're just conducting testing right now, so I don't have any hard data, but there's definitely a visual difference in our fodder. It's growing about an inch taller. It's visibly greener, and we're having good results. But like I said, we're just right in the middle of doing that right now. We put 1 pint. We've got the big system. I don't know what the number is there, but we put 1 pint of salt brine. It's about a 30% solution in the tank every day, and it just filters through the system, and we're having some good results with that.
30%. Good.
Does that help you?
I have a question that I would like to pose. I want to know how everyone is sourcing their seed, and approximately, how much seed are you using in your biscuits? I'm kind of curious about that. And your seed cost, seed source, seed cost, and what your utilization and your germination rates are.
My seed source, as I already mentioned, is Paul. Paul's with Wheatland Seed. He's in Brigham City, Utah. I believe he ships seed to a lot of Fodder Solutions customers. Our germination rate is extremely well. How you rate that, I don't know. I haven't seen any seeds that haven't germinated.
That would be pretty good.
What was the other one?
Germination rate, so cost.
Cost, 2200 weight, Paul, I think is what we're at now. Of course, it fluctuates. It's a commodity market. We have a 20-pound biscuit.
20-pound biscuit. So what's your seed to biscuit weight ratio?
2.5 to 20.
2.5 to 20.
Mm-hmm.
Paul, you and I need to talk. That's Paul. We're paying 38 cents a pound. I do 2 pounds, yield about an 18-pound biscuit. So I am definitely in Santa Rosa looking for alternative sources.
Yeah, we get our seed from Paul too, I believe. It's through Simply Country. Gets it from Wheatland Seed, and I believe we have a very good germination record. As of now, we are doing an 18 to 20 pound biscuit, but we are just jumped up the seeding rate to 2.5 cups a day per biscuit or tray. So it would be 2.5 pounds, right? Yes, right there.
I'm sorry, Paul, I don't buy from you, but I'm feeling like the black sheep here. We buy our seed from Fodder, which is just a company in Arizona that procures seed, fertilizers, and that sort of thing. I just call them, and they source this for me. I buy about 100,000 pounds of seed a year, and I'm paying right now 37 cents a pound delivered. I am now using 2 1/3 cups of seed per biscuit, and I'm getting 26 pounds of growth. Average. That's my average weight.
Something you may be interested in, and VJ can tell you more about this, the fodder systems in the southern part of India are sprouting corn and corn only, complete. So, yeah, there's some food for thought there and other things you can sprout in the system.
Just one quick clarification, and I know I've heard cups mentioned a few times. It's pounds every time. So 2.5 pounds, 2 pounds, 2 3/4 pounds.
Kyle, can you just, VJ will talk about how they sprout in India?
Actually, we don't do pounds, we do in kilograms. Okay, the ratio is we put in 1.3 kilograms of seed and you get around 8 to 9 kilos of fodder. It's almost the same like barley. Only thing is that the leaf is much more thicker and broader, and the animals love it better than barley though.
I just got a question. It's more of a dairy application, so maybe Cindy's the best one to answer that. But we get our best milk production on our grass-fed dairy. Obviously, June, when the grass is on. What we'd like to do is be able to use fodder extensively to replicate that kind of year round. What's the comparison with your good fresh grass versus fodder? Is it pretty comparable, or there's some differences? What have you seen there?
On a dry matter basis, you're probably looking at there's some comparability, but you're going to have more lignin, more cellulose in your pasture forages because you just are. You're looking at digestibilities that, 30, 35, NDF on your fodder, which is, phenomenal. It's very digestible, highly digestible. And the forages in your pastures are not going to be that digestible. So there's going to be some differences there. So in other words, the fodder is going to be more highly digestible. You're going to get more milk out of that fodder than you are necessarily your pasture forages. However, I will say that there's lots you can do on your pasture forages to up the NEL and to up the NFC so that you can get as much energy and as much milk in your forages as possible. Start with a soil analysis and make sure that you have your soils balanced. What we found is that we were so calcium deficient that we couldn't make any pectin, we couldn't make any sugar in our grasses, and our lignins were through the roof. And once you perfect your soil, and you can do this, with gypsum, some very, I think, inexpensive soil amendments, we were able to get a much higher quality and a much higher yield in our pasture forages. And, that equates to money right there. But fodder, in my opinion, would be great. We're looking at fodder for a different purpose. We want to replace our grain. That's our most expensive. Energy is a requirement in our ration, as it will be in yours, obviously, because that dairy cow has to have her ration balanced 365. She doesn't care what time of year it is. So that's how we're trying to use it from that end. Yeah, and the thing that you have to really watch, though, is that the effective fiber. You're going to have to make sure you've got enough effective fiber in your ration when you're trying to do just pasture forages and fodder itself in a ruminant. That's really critical for that rumen ecology. So, yeah, and it's a moving target, because throughout the season, your grasses are changing. They're changing in quality and in quantity. And so you're always trying, to match what your land is producing with the supplements that you're putting on top, trying to meet that moving target. Because you've got a cow that you have to feed specific requirements. She requires 40 pounds of dry matter every day, with a certain amount of protein, carbs, and fat. I mean, she needs all of that every day. And so your pastures are changing, your quality of your hay is changing, and she's changing because she's moving through her lactation, so her nutritional requirements are changing somewhat. So it's a challenge. I think it's a very intellectual way to farm because it's not easy. You really have to be on top of it.
Just a additional comment. In our operation in Vienna, which is just north of here, we have some very, very good irrigated pastures, and we would do a 33 to 34 day rest rotation. And we had some friends over, and they were asking about the fodder machine, and so we were just in the process of moving the cattle into a fresh field. And, of course, they're waiting at the gate, waiting to open up. And where they go into the fresh field, they had their heads down. They were going at the fresh clover and different species in that field. Then we went out there with the fodder wagon. And I'm telling you, you better get out of the way because they dropped everything, that fresh field, to come to the fodder. So it's the cow test as far as I'm concerned. Yes, we just use ATVs. We load the fodder in the we got it side by side in the wagon. We load it in that, and we just go out through the field and just toss it out, scatter it out through the cattle like you would flakes of hay, and they go to it and they clean up every crumb of it. So, yeah.
Oh no, we just give them the whole biscuit. Yeah, they're. Yeah, it's and it's kind of both a toy and a meal and food. A toy. Yeah, they're very entertaining.
I've got a question for you. One of the things that's happened on our farm is that we have alfalfa fields during the summer, and our cattle are always on fodder, and they were out in a pasture that wasn't one of the alfalfa fields. Well, they proceeded to start at night hopping over the fence to go to the alfalfa fields. And of course, it terrified me to begin with, and we'd race out there and get them all off. But then all of a sudden, it started dawning on us. It doesn't even affect them. We can take our cattle, put them on a full-blown alfalfa field, and it doesn't even faze them. They do not get sick. They do not bloat. Nothing happens to them other than good. Can you, as a doctor, try to explain? Sorry, I've just put you on the spot.
I think the South Africans need to chime in here.
We found the same experience in South Africa, that guys who were backgrounding cattle and feeding fodder as a supplement could let them loose on a alfalfa field, and also they didn't bloat. And they were also highly sort of anxious that something was going to happen. And I can only think that it's got to do with the microbial gut and the pH as well. Give it to the doctor.
Yeah, right. The doctor that can't help you. I'm thinking that what ultimately you're asking is, what's going on there in the rumen, and that's the dynamics that we're all trying to get our arms around, is what's going on with the microbial populations. Because what causes bloat, obviously, is gas production from gas-producing microorganisms. And what you're experiencing in those rumens is a change in that rumen population. And so what you're seeing is fewer of those methane-producing type organisms. And when you think about that the froth formers, the ones that are actually forming froth, and if you've got enough effective fiber, that's also a benefit if you're trying to prevent bloat in a ruminant. So you've got several things going for you with the kind of ration that you're providing. Now, can I tell you what that population change is? No, I can't do that yet, but maybe with time we'll have we'll get our hand around some of that. Exactly. What we want to do is be able to track microbial population changes as the rumen is adapting to fodder. And then we'll have our own internal control, because we will also have side by side in real time a grain control that will be maintained, as well as the ones that is transitioning to fodder. So at that point in time, you've got a real good, you're watching the population change over time, and you're also watching it in sync with a control. So it should give us some interesting information.
So can we make a greenhouse gas claim on this? Get the EPA to endorse this? That'd be great.
Sorry, yes, I was actually Cindy just actually mentioned the word methane gases, okay? In a study done in India about 2 years ago on fodder specifically, okay, they measured the methane output of dairy cows, okay, because of the contribution that the dairy industry makes to methane gases. The highest in the agricultural industry in the world is dairy cows. And they noticed a 40% plus reduction in methane gases on fodder-fed cattle. So it definitely does have. We've actually got the Danish government looking right now into funding dairy projects that are fodder-fed, because of that being a positive, call it carbon gas emission reduction.
Question for all the Fodder Solution people from around the world. Has anybody tried a mix of corn and small grains being sprouted together?
Yes, we have. We've successfully, used legumes or legumes, I think you call them here. So a combination, it can be a mixture of, say, barley of 70%. You might add a legume, like a lupin or a pea. If you're looking for that oil content, you can add a black sunflower seed as well. So any of those combinations work really well. Corn, a 50% mix of corn and barley is a fantastic feed, because your starch levels are much higher. So don't be afraid to experiment and mix. The only seed that we haven't had success with is sorghum. But apart from that, you can almost sprout anything. Yeah.
Right here. Oh, that's okay. And the gals that do the beef in Arizona. I have a health and wellness center, so my interest is a little bit different than growing cows and horses and pigs and sheep and goats. It's for human consumption. I am totally impressed, because we deal with people that have autism and things like that, people are today saying stay away from beef. Well, it's because of what I see now, what they're getting. Also, I don't know, Cindy, if you're doing any studies that's going for this, because we do wheatgrass and we do barley, and we think that it's one of the good things for the human. Could you kind of touch on this a little bit, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you bringing that up, because we didn't really talk about that. And I do have some milk samples that are on a GC right now that are going to be from fodder-fed versus grain-fed cows, looking at the milk. From a beef perspective, we've already done the research on the grass-fed, and that's stellar in terms of the antioxidants and the omega-3. Everybody's familiar with omega-3. You might also be familiar with other antioxidants like conjugated linoleic acid. People talk about it like CLA. How many of you have heard of those things? Good. See, those are all really wonderful things for the livestock, which they get out of the grass and which they get out of the fodder. Fodder is going to be exceptionally high in precursors for omega-3 and for CLA. And now another one on the scene, TVA, transvicinic acid, which is another very potent antioxidant that gets converted in us to CLA, and it's 4 times as high as CLA. So it's very exciting times for the grass-fed and the fodder-fed movement, because these are really catapulting these products way ahead of the game in terms of its nutrient content with antioxidants. And the consumers are waking up to that. And it's not just the omega-3, CLAs, TVAs, it's not just those really wonderful fatty acids, but it's also the vitamins, the B vitamins, the vitamin A, the vitamin E, the vitamin C. I mean, you're getting a very potent, very highly digestible, easily absorbed form of those nutrients. So from your perspective, I mean, this to me must really sound, incredible. Yeah, it's good for the cows, and it's also good for the humans
Just as a quick comment on his question before I hand it off for another question here, I will say we just sent a T12 system up to a university in Canada. They should have received it yesterday, I hope, specifically for the purpose of testing nutrition levels, omegas, fatty acids, and everything in milk and in beef that's fed fodder. So lab tests are underway for those things soon. That's Thompson Rivers University in British Columbia.
If I can just add to that, what Dr. was saying, one anecdotal evidence we have is we had a gentleman in Sydney who, one of our customers, who bought a system and he was feeding it to his animals, and he thought he'd heard about this wheatgrass stuff. So he said, all right, I'll try this. And he got, just every day he'd get some fodder and he'd put it through a juicer and he was juicing it, and he was about 65, I think. And he used to break horses, but he couldn't do it anymore because he's old and buggered, as we say, right? And he was drinking, the fodder juice for a couple of months, and after a couple of months, he said he was bouncing out of bed every morning, had a spring in his step, 20-year-old scars on his arms from an accident were fading away. And this June, when my partner in Japan came to Australia, I wanted to go and meet this guy, right? And I contacted Flavio and said, "Where's that guy? That guy, drinking the fodder juice." And Flavio told me, he's gone. He got his mistress pregnant and divorced and run off. So it remains anecdotal, I'm sorry.
That's pretty good.
So,
this question's for Daryl Woods. Daryl, you're the president of Panorama Meats, isn't that true? Okay. And you're in a very unique position because you're watching the grass-fed beef industry, and I'm a beef producer. I'm interested in that. My question to you is, do you think we're going to find a difference between fodder-fed beef and grass-fed beef to where we need to think about marketing fodder-fed beef under a different label? In other words, the grass-fed beef does have a reputation. As you know, it's a darker meat. Sometimes it's gamier. And I'm just thinking that with fodder-fed beef, if the texture, the color, and all of that is significantly different, if we shouldn't think about marketing fodder-fed beef under that label. I thought you'd be in a position to comment on that.
Well, there obviously could be a marketing possibility down the line, as you just described. I would hesitate to say that, that we'd be doing that right away, but I think potentially there could be, as public awareness and consumer awareness and producer awareness of the fodder systems spreads. We all know that grass-fed beef is widely inconsistent, and that's basically because of the different range conditions and feed conditions they are from one state to another, even within states. So anything you can do to improve that consistency is going to be a benefit as grass-fed beef becomes more accepted throughout the marketplace. So I I will hang on to your thought about fodder marketing. I think that might be something to think about. So. Somebody else?
I've seen, I'm also a beef producer as well as equine, but I'm wondering, I was interested in this corn sprouting, and would that qualify if you used any type of grain or legume and fed it as a fodder product or a commodity? Would that qualify for grass-fed in that, we're taking the grain stage to the sprout stage? And my question, I guess, for Mr. Wood there is that if I did some corn sprouting with that, would my beef be qualify for grass-fed?
Tricky question. Technically, my understanding that corn is considered a grass until it goes into the grain stage, and the USDA has some strict definitions of what grass-fed is versus not. Or if you're going to make a 100% grass-fed claim, you have to follow the USDA definition of what that is. But, my feeling would be, personally, that if you were to use a corn sprout that was in a grass stage, I think it'd be hard to argue anything other than the fact that it's grass. The American Grass-Fed Association has certified the fodder systems as a definite grass-fed possibility. So they've endorsed it, and when it comes down to any further thoughts on that, it might just come down to an individual interpretation of whether it is or not. But I would think there are good arguments why it would be.
Excuse me, I have a question about the guy who was drinking the fodder juice. How did that affect his marbling?
All right. Everybody, pretty much, the questions you have, I hope you got them answered. I think most of these folks are going to be around here a little bit, and so you can ask them personally and get a little bit more of a one-on-one discussion and question. But I hope that you got a little bit of a feel and an idea of how fodder does and can help lots of different situations, because it really does. Do we understand exactly how it all works? No, but the way I describe that is bumblebees can't fly either, but they do. So I don't know how to explain things sometimes, but sometimes they just work. And if you really, really think about it, it just makes sense. It's a simple thing, and usually the simple things make the most sense. But we've got a lot of work going on in South Africa, here in Chico, and other areas. We've shipped to different universities. We have Kentucky Appalachia is going to start doing some poultry work. We know that we'll get the answers that you can write in books, but in the meantime, we know that we see that all species are doing well. Now, we did have some questions from some emails, but I think because of the time, we're just going to have to forego those, and I'm sorry for those folks that aren't going to get those questions answered, but we'll individually answer them later. I want to thank the panelists and appreciate them, so if you'd thank them for coming up here, we're grateful for that. There are those who participated who didn't think they were going to, and Rob, you have to come up here and say one thing about your pork, because you noticed when he was talking real quick, they shot a picture up here of some bacon, so you got to tell us about this.
I supplied some bacon to a guy that was doing a cooking competition. He took it. It wasn't a world competition, but they gave him a certificate that said the world's best bacon. Based on flavor, the quality of meat, the color. I do know that the day after the competition, we got 50 phone calls for people trying to buy bacon. So the proof is in the pudding, I guess. So
or in the bacon.
Or in the bacon.
Yeah. So are there anything on the panel anybody feels that they needed to say before we're good? No, Scott, you're not on the panel. No. Shane, you had a comment you'd like to make before we close up? Yes? You would? Yeah. Shane would?
I guess I just put myself in your seat, which I was once in 2 years ago, and I kind of feel like we made it look like a magic snake oil, especially with the old man who was drinking it. I certainly not going to endorse that one personally, but One question I would have asked is what goes wrong, being as you have users up here, what's potential problems? If I'm a customer, potential customer, what potential problems can I have? You can have problems. I have a goat dairy next to me who has had a fair amount of trouble with theirs, mainly because he wouldn't leave the thing alone. So I guess my last recommendation is, Kurt, the gentlemen here that are doing fodder solutions have more experience than you do. And so if you're going to buy one, I suggest you do what they say.
I just want to thank everybody for coming. It's really an honor to have you all here. We're very proud of what we do, and it's really exciting to have such a great opportunity to be able to feed animals and do the things that we're doing, and to listen to our folks up here. Thank you so much for coming and doing what you do. We really, truly appreciate it. Yeah, for sure.